The Shawnee warriors were fierce defenders of their land and culture. In the 17th century, the Shawnee were renowned throughout the Ohio Valley for their bravery and skill in battle. Masters of guerrilla warfare, they resisted encroaching settlers, led by great chiefs like Tecumseh, who united tribes against American expansion. From Tippecanoe to the War of 1812, the Shawnee fought with tenacity, their struggle leaving a legacy of courage. The Shawnee spirit lives on, a testament to their strength and resilience. The Shawnee
Shawnee and English aren't closely related as in a linguistic type of way. However, Shawnee did adopt some words from English. It was an unwritten language until the 1600s, but the interesting thing about it is that it was first documented by the French. So it was first documented by the French, but there is an English influence on the language. They both are now using the Latin alphabet for writing. This is apparently something that the Shawnee adopted recently. So it seems like there's, from this and the other research I've done, it seems like there are huge revitalization efforts for Shawnee specifically. A perfect example of English influence on, specifically English Christianity influence on the Shawnee language, is that they had to make a word for angel because they didn't have Christian beliefs, and they believe in animism, and they believe that there is a female creator, very entirely different, even though now a lot of indigenous people do have adopted Christianity into their religious practices. However, angel was not something that was in Shawnee traditions or spirituality or anything like that. So they had to come up with a word. It's angel-e. Angel-e. With like an inflection on the E. That shows that it's a Shawnee term. They added that inflection specifically to show that it's their own language, even though it's a concept that is not a part of their own worldview.
So, my name is Z, and I want to talk about the Shawnee language. The Shawnee language is part of the Algonquin language family. The Shawnee language was once the trade language of the Mississippi River Valley. And something that's really important to think about is that currently there are fewer than 20 first language Shawnee speakers, meaning that in the present, fewer than 20 people learned Shawnee as their first language. While I'm no expert, that is one of the reasons why it's so important for me to make these videos and to talk about what I'm learning in these Shawnee language classes that I'm taking, and trying to share that with you all as a way to internalize what I'm learning and internalize my own indigeneity. So, my name is Z.
Take a drink from the cup. You wanna reach the blood. It colors me red, color me red. We rise in the night with the will and the fire. So color me red, color me red. Hey, together we pray.
A gentle reminder that being two-spirit is not synonymous with being queer and or trans. The phrase has a unique history, considering it was translated from an Anishinaabe word and became popularized in the 1990s. Two-spirit is meant to be an all-inclusive term unified and describing various gender and sexual identities unique to Indigenous communities. Each Indigenous community has a unique and complex understanding of ontology that may or may not be similar to understandings of gender and sexuality. Yet Two-Spirit has historical, cultural, and political implications for those who do identify with the phrase. There are Two-Spirit folks who do identify as queer and or trans, and there are many who do not. In any case, it's complicated, and that's what makes it beautiful. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
There are deep things you can't explain in English that you can in Shawnee. It's a spiritual language. Everything means something. The ground, the trees, the relationship of sky, water, rock. This is a quote by George Blanchard. He was a governor for the absentee Shawnee tribe. Him, and along with several other Shawnee natives, have spoken about the language in this way, as if it's highly respected, very spiritual. Shawnee has a polysynthetic structure, so you can put a lot of meaning into one single word that can't be expressed the same way in English. Ka, kinu, tena, makwa. That is one word in the Shawnee language. It means he signed by hand to me repeatedly. So traditional Shawnee beliefs operate on animism, which means that every living being has some type of, not being, but every living thing, period, has some type of consciousness, some type of life that generally people only look at other humans or maybe even animals that way. However, the Shawnee people, animals, spirits, large trees specifically, tobacco, maize, things like that. Animate nouns will end in an A, and inanimate sounds will end in an I. As far as sociolinguistics go for the Shawnee, there are several initiatives that have been taken to revitalize the language, especially the Shawnee Language Immersion Program. That is something that I've seen through scrolling on TikToks and making these TikToks. I do see that there are people that are enrolled in that program. I reached out to the absentee tribe to see if I could get a copy of their dictionary. However, I never got a response. But there's a card game called Ta Kiwaki. George Blanchard was the person who made that. The Eastern Shawnee tribe of Oklahoma has been offering language classes since 2012. And unfortunately, through the loss of some of the language, we've lost some of the traditions. So the bread dance, the green corn dance, and the war dance have all, the exposure to those traditions have been reduced due to the lack of exposure to the language.
These hoops, they represent life. They represent the beauty, the diversity in life. Creating these formations and what they represent and honoring our life and what the Creator has given to us is what our tradition is all about.
Hi, this message is for all my Indigenous people out there. If you're a light-skinned Native, you're still Indigenous. If you can't speak your language, you are still Indigenous. If you grew up without your cultural teachings, you're still Indigenous. If you were adopted outside of your community, you're still Indigenous. Always remember, you are strong, you are resilient, and you carry the strength of your ancestors. You are enough. Now go out there and just give her. Hi, this
Shawnee has a very complex morphological system, which is why I made a whole separate video on it. This is because of their animacy hierarchy. Animacy is rooted in their traditions. It's the belief that every living thing has some type of consciousness, even like maize, tobacco, things like that. It's important to note that this hierarchy isn't about like real world importance, but it's more of a linguistic hierarchy. So humans are considered to be more important than animals. A speaker, the person who is speaking to another, might be considered as more important than the person they're speaking to. So when forming a verb, Shawnee doesn't have a fixed order of where the morphemes will go. It's based upon who's more important in the sentence, according to the language's hierarchy. I'm going to talk about the similarities between German and Shawnee. There are none, at least as far as linguistics go. Geographically, though, Ohio has a really big German population. It's the biggest in the country. Shawnee, they immigrated from Kentucky to the Ohio River Valley, whether it was intentional or forced. And those two languages they never overlapped time-wise. You know why? Upon doing my research, I saw that Germans started to settle in Ohio in the 1830s. The 1830s is when the Indian Removal Act was signed, and like the Shawnee had to go to Oklahoma. So it's almost like the Shawnee language was just completely taken away from that area, and it was like replaced with German. I don't know very many German speakers. Also don't know very many Shawnee speakers, even though people there have lots of, ancestry with it. But linguistic-wise, nothing. Completely just not similar whatsoever. But I do think that German came in and the German settlers just took over what should have been the Shawnees' land, language, everything. German and English are much more closely related because they're both Germanic languages. They share cognates. These are words that have similar origins and meanings. So house in English is Haus in German. Water is Wasser, because the W is pronounced as a V in German, but it's written with a W, like water. Father is Vater. They both use the Latin alphabet. They share similar grammatical structures, even though German doesn't have a dominant word order. SVO is pretty commonly used, and that's also used in English. They have similar past tense verbs. Something that was interesting that I found was that German still retains some of its linguistic features that date back pretty far that English has lost over time. It's really interesting. Like German, for example, has a grammatical gender for nouns. They also have a distinction between du and sie. It means you, but du would be for somebody that you're more familiar with. It's informal, versus sie would be more formal. Considering that English is a much more dominant language than German, I do find it interesting that English is the one that lost its features over time. German syntax does not have a dominant word order. They use both SVO and SOV. It just depends on if you're making a simple statement, if you're asking a question, if you're describing something in detail. An example of a simple sentence that would use SVO is Ich esse Apfel, which means I eat apple. German uses SOV when they're making a negative statement, asking questions, or expressing tense. So it would be weil ich Apfel esse, because I apple ate. Syntactically, I'm not sure if that's a word or not. German is like taking pieces of a puzzle and arranging them in different ways. Honesty before politeness. This is a pragmatic feature of the German language. They prioritize directness and they express their gratitude directly. With that being true, German does have a distinct formal and informal way of addressing somebody. So du would be more casual, informal for people that you know. And then Sie would be for an acquaintance or somebody you don't know. I did take German for 4 years in high school, and Frau Euchert told me that the way that Americans view friendships is very different from the way that German culture views friendships. German pragmatics are evolving due to technology, social media, slang. They've taken words from English like liken for like and Sharon to share. Ian means dude and Yalla means let's go, and these are new pragmatic terms among the young people. German does follow a specific set of rules phonologically. They have a stress pattern on the first syllable of a root word. So the German word for bicycle is Fahrrad. So you would put an emphasis on the Fahrrad. Vowels that are followed by an H are usually lengthened. So re means deer in German. Mutter means mother in German. By the double consonant, you can tell that the U is going to be a short vowel. There are pitch variations in German which contribute to the semantic context of the sentence, but a distinguishing feature of that is that the pitch drops off at the end of statements.
So one of my favourite German idioms is Ich verstehe nur Bahnhof, which literally means I understand only station, but it actually means, in everyday speech, it means I don't understand anything. I have no clue what you're talking about. But there's actually a story behind it from where it came from. After World War I, the soldiers were so exhausted that they just focused on the word Bahnhof, which was station, because that was their way of getting home. So what they ended up doing was just focusing on that one word, Bahnhof, station, and that's where the expression comes from. So one of my favourite German idioms is Ich verstehe